All right, welcome back to Right on the Edge. My name is Derek, and if you're here, it's because the algorithm oop, knows that you're ADD like me. And if you're ADD like me, that means every day you like to watch something a little bit different. So my ADD and my autism, they war. They're fighting. One wants the same and one wants something different. But we're gonna look at a Japanese urban legend called uh the Train to Nowhere. Now, supposedly these are based on true events. Supposedly, right? According to this disclaimer here. But we're going to look at this and find out, and hopefully, we're going to be spooked out just a bit together.
Before we begin, I want you to imagine this. You're on your regular commute home, the same train route you've taken hundreds of times.
Ooh, hundreds.
The
Maybe
familiar
thousands.
rhythm of the tracks, the usual stops, everything exactly as it should be. But then something goes wrong. The train doesn't stop where it's supposed to. The stations you pass aren't on any map. And slowly, you realize you're not just lost. You've crossed into somewhere else entirely. This story comes from
Yeah. All right, this is good.
Japan, where urban legends about mysterious train stations and vanishing passengers have circulated for decades.
Isn't it cool how our myths and stuff are based around the mundane, like our everyday lives, and it just varies by culture to culture what it is?
But what makes Kisaragi Station different is that it was documented in real time through text messages and online posts.
No way.
A young woman named Hasumi shared her experience as it happened, creating one of the most disturbing digital ghost stories ever recorded. Now, you might be wondering, is this real? Did Hasumi actually experience what she claimed? Or was this an elaborate piece of fiction? Here's what I can tell you.
It's real.
The original posts were made on Japanese message boards in the early 2000s, and they spread like wildfire across the internet. Whether you believe it's true or not, the story has terrified people for over 2 decades.
It's crazy. Even this voice he's putting on is our cultural representation of what a scary story should sound like. But in different cultures, they use a different cadence. Or do they?
And tonight, you'll understand why. What I'm about to share with you isn't just a ghost story, it's a descent into psychological horror that challenges everything we think we know about reality. So settle in, because once we board this train with Hasumi, there's no guarantee we'll make it back to the world we know. Let me take you
You're really setting my expectations high. So good job.
back to that night when everything changed for a 23-year-old woman who thought she was just going home. It was a Tuesday evening in January, and Hasumi was exhausted from another long day at work. She'd been staying late at the office more often recently, trying to prove herself at the marketing firm where she'd started just 6 months earlier. The winter air was sharp as she hurried down the steps into Shimbashi Station, her breath forming small clouds in the underground chill. The platform was moderately crowded, with the usual mix of salarymen and office workers, all eager to get home. Hasumi found her spot near the yellow line and waited for the 11:40 train, the same train she caught every Tuesday when she worked late.
Spooky.
She knew this route by heart, 14 stops from Shimbashi to her apartment near Yokohama, 28 minutes door to door, including the walk from the station.
That's not bad. That's a pretty good commute. I mean, right?
When the train arrived, she slipped into a seat near the window and pulled out her phone to text her roommate Yuki that she'd be home soon. The familiar announcements played overhead as they pulled away from the platform, and Hasumi let herself relax for the first time all day. But as the minutes ticked by, something felt different. The train seemed to be moving faster than usual, and the stops weren't coming as frequently as they should. Hasumi glanced at her watch. They should have reached Shinagawa by now, but the train was still picking up speed, racing through tunnels that seemed darker and longer than she remembered. She looked around the car and noticed something odd. There were only about 8 other passengers scattered throughout, which was unusual even for a late train.
Yeah, around the time everybody's getting off of office work, those things are packed. Usually either people drinking or going home.
Most of them appeared to be sleeping, their heads tilted against the windows or resting on their hands. The silence was unsettling. No conversations, no phone calls, just the rhythmic clacking of the wheels on the tracks. Hasumi checked her phone. 11:55. They'd been traveling for 15 minutes, but she couldn't recall hearing
No phone calls is pretty normal in Japan. It's considered disrespectful to be too loud when you're there. Like maybe one quiet phone call, but not many.
any station announcements since they'd left Shimbashi. A knot of anxiety began forming in her stomach as she strained to see outside, but the windows only reflected the dim interior lights against the darkness beyond. Then, finally, the train began to slow. Hasumi felt a wave of relief wash over her. Maybe she'd just been distracted and missed the announcements. But as they pulled into the station, her relief quickly turned to confusion. The platform was completely empty, and the station signs were too distant and poorly lit to read clearly. The doors opened with their familiar hiss, but nobody got on or off. Hasumi hesitated, wondering if she should step out to see where they were, but something about the empty platform made her stay in her seat. The silence outside was absolute, no footsteps.
However, I think a native in Japan probably would have got out just to see where they're at, because they would have assumed that they got on the wrong train, which is possible. Like, the same several trains going to different places will a lot of times stop at the same stop.
No announcements, no sounds of the city above. After what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 30 seconds, the doors closed and the train lurched forward again. Hasumi's unease deepened. She'd never seen a station so completely deserted, not even in the middle of the night. And why hadn't anyone gotten off? Surely some of these passengers needed to transfer or had reached their destination. She pulled out her phone and opened her messaging app, her fingers trembling slightly as she typed to Yuki, "Something weird is happening with my train. We've been going for 20 minutes, but I don't recognize any of the stations." The message failed to send. She tried again.
Okay, so the message failed to send. Well, how on earth did she write it on the message board then?
Watching the loading icon spin endlessly before timing out. No signal. That was
The most common messaging app is Line. So if she was on there, she'd probably be on Line or something similar.
impossible. The train lines in Tokyo had coverage everywhere, even in the deepest tunnels. Hasumi looked up at the other passengers, thinking she might ask someone where they were. But they all seemed to be in the same strange, sleepy state. But she couldn't tell if he was actually sleeping or just resting. His breathing was so shallow she could barely see his chest moving. The train continued through the darkness, and Hasumi pressed her face to the window, trying to make out any landmarks or signs. All she could see was an endless black tunnel, broken occasionally by brief flashes of light that revealed nothing but concrete walls streaking past. Her heart.
What would you guys do in this situation? I know what I'd do. Freak out a little bit.
Began to race as the reality of her situation sank in. This wasn't her regular route. This wasn't any route she'd ever been on. The train had been traveling for over half an hour now without stopping, and she had no idea where they were heading or how to get back to the world she knew. Then, just as panic was beginning to overwhelm her, the train started to slow again. This time, as they pulled into the station, Hasumi could see the platform more clearly. It was longer than normal stations, stretching far into the distance on both sides. The lighting was dim and yellowish, casting long shadows between the support pillars. And there, on
Jeez, man. This is like a Slenderman type skit. It's really getting in my head.
the platform sign, she could finally make out the name of the station. Kisaragi. She'd never heard of it before. In all her years living in Tokyo, through all her travels around the metropolitan area, she'd never seen or heard of a station called Kisaragi. The characters were clear enough. Kisaragi meaning the second month of the old Japanese calendar, but this station didn't exist on any map she knew. The doors opened, and this time Hasumi felt an overwhelming urge.
Maybe she got into the spiritual realm, you know? She's in another world. And maybe she's joined these people there that are, cursed to ride this train forever. Like, who knows?
To get off. Maybe she could find someone to help her, or at least figure out where she was and how to get home. The other passengers remained motionless as she stood up and stepped onto the platform. The moment her feet touched the concrete, the train doors closed behind her with a decisive snap. She spun around, but the train was already pulling away, its windows glowing like eyes in the darkness as it disappeared into the tunnel.
God, that'd be scary.
And then she was alone. The platform stretched endlessly in both directions, disappearing into shadows that seemed to swallow the weak overhead lights. Hasumi stood frozen, watching the red tail lights of her train fade into the tunnel until even that tiny connection to the familiar world was gone. The silence was complete, not the comfortable quiet of late night, but something deeper and more unsettling. No distant rumble of traffic from above, no electronic hums or mechanical sounds that you'd expect in any subway station, just absolute, suffocating silence. She pulled out her phone.
Japanese horror is always these like psychological mind games. It's like good, and at the same time, sometimes I'm just like, get to a point already. Oh man, where's the monster demon come out? But I think having nothing there is actually worse than if there was something there. You might have a chance against something, but you don't have a chance to get against nothing.
Again, desperate to contact someone, anyone. Still no signal. The screen showed the time as 12:23, but that couldn't be right. She'd only been on the train for about 40 minutes, hadn't she? Time seemed to be moving differently here, like the air itself was thicker, harder to move through. Hasumi walked slowly toward what appeared to be the exit. Her foot
exit, man, I would have gone to like the little like helper police station things, like sometimes they have people here that are working to help you out.
Footsteps echoing strangely in the empty space. The sound seemed to bounce off invisible walls, creating an odd doubling effect that made it sound like someone was following her. She kept turning around, but the platform behind her remained empty. The station felt wrong in ways she couldn't quite articulate. The
lack of sound, the lack of people, it being too long, it's so surreal.
Proportions were off. The ceiling was too high, the platform too wide, the distance between the pillars inconsistent. It was as if someone had built this place from a half-remembered description of what a train station should look like, getting all the details slightly wrong.
Man,
as she approached the far end of the platform, she noticed something that made her blood run cold. There were no ticket gates, no turnstiles, no attendant booth, no way to exit or enter the station properly. Just a dark corridor that led upward, with no signs or directions indicating where it went. But she had no choice. She couldn't stay on this platform forever, and maybe if she could get to street level, she'd be able to figure out where she was and find her way home. The corridor was narrow and seemed to stretch much longer than it should have. The walls were concrete, stained with moisture and age, and the fluorescent lights overhead flickered intermittently, creating a strobe effect that made her feel dizzy. After what felt like 10 minutes of walking upward, Hasumi finally emerged into what should have been the street level, but instead of the familiar urban landscape of Tokyo, she found herself in a place that defied explanation. She was standing in a small area that looked like a station entrance.
Oh, fuck no. Oh, shit. Just a station entrance, man. I expected there to be, like, woods or something, or, like, I don't know. I don't know what I was expecting, but it wasn't nothing. Like, man, nothing's really getting to me.
But beyond the glass doors, there was nothing but darkness. Not the darkness of night. This was something else entirely. It
Should have blacked out these windows for the effect, right? Just doors leading into nothing.
was as if the world simply ended just outside the building, replaced by an empty void
Bro, don't
that
go out
seemed
there,
to
and you're
stretch
missing a finger.
infinitely in all directions. Through the glass, she could see a few streetlights in the distance, their pale glow creating small circles of illumination that only emphasized how vast and empty everything else was. There were no buildings, no roads, no signs of civilization, just those few lonely lights scattered across what appeared to be an endless plain.
What would you guys do? Like, in this, I keep expecting there to be something. How does she message on the message board? Like, she can't message her friend. How does she get on the internet?
Sumi tried the doors, but they were locked. She pushed and pulled, but they wouldn't budge. She was trapped between the mysterious platform below and this impossible landscape above. Panic was setting in now, her breathing becoming shallow and rapid as the reality of her situation fully hit her. She had to get out of here. She had to find a way back to the real world. Against every instinct screaming at her to stay put, Hasumi made her way back down to the platform.
Where, like, would you go outside where there's nothing, or would you go back to where there might be a train? Man, bro, I'm going for that train. I'm going to the other side of this train station. I'm waiting.
Maybe another train would come. Maybe she could flag it down and convince the conductor to take her back to somewhere she recognized. The platform felt even more oppressive now that she'd seen what lay above. She walked to the edge and peered down the tunnel where her train had disappeared. The tracks extended into absolute blackness, with no lights or signals visible in either direction. That's when she heard it, a sound so faint she almost thought she was imagining it. A rhythmic tapping, like someone walking with a cane or crutch. The sound was coming from the far end of the platform, from the direction she hadn't explored yet. As the footsteps grew closer, Hasumi saw a figure emerge from the shadows.
No, ain't no fucking way, dog. Ain't no fucking way. Bro, I'm staying right there and deer into headlights until I know that thing's a human.
It was an elderly man, moving slowly and deliberately. As he came into the light, she could see that he was missing his right leg from the knee down, supporting himself with a wooden crutch.
That's not how missing legs look. Bro, you a monster. This is a monster.
His clothes were old-fashioned, like something from decades past, and his face was gaunt and pale. He stopped about 10 feet away from her and studied her with eyes that seemed far too knowing. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice carrying an
No fucking shit, good man. Sir, no fucking shit. Now, if you'd like to direct me on how to leave, I'd be happy to. I'd be happy to.
An odd echo despite the open space around them. "I know," Hasumi replied, surprised by how small her own voice sounded. "I don't know how I got here. I was just on my regular train home and then you ended up at Kisaragi Station," the man finished. "It happens sometimes, not often, but sometimes the barriers become thin and people slip through." "Slip through to where? What is this place?"
It's the end of nowhere. The end of everywhere.
The old man's expression grew sad. This is nowhere and everywhere.
That was a guess, guy. That was a guess. I did not know that was gonna happen. Okay, I swear it.
A station between stations, you might say. A place
Crazy.
for those who are lost or those who have nowhere else to go. But I do have somewhere to go, Hasumi said desperately. I have a home, a job, people who care about me. I need to get back. Many have said the same thing, he replied. Some do find their way back, others. He gestured vaguely at the empty platform around them. How long have you been here? Time doesn't work the same way in this place. Could be days, could be decades. After a while, it stops mattering. The thought of being trapped here indefinitely filled Hasumi with a terror so intense.
Yeah, that'd be terrifying, man. That'd be so terrifying. That's like the lack of your freedom, bro. I'd go outside in the darkness at that point and be like, yeah, fuck it, dude. These demons out here, bro, just eat me.
She felt like she might collapse. There has to be a way out. Please, you must know something. The old man was quiet for a long moment, then he pointed down the tunnel with his crutch. Some have tried walking the tracks, following them back to where they came from, but I wouldn't recommend it. Why not? Because once you leave this platform, once you step into that darkness, you might find things that are far worse than being lost. At least here, you're still yourself. Out there. He shook his head.
Shit, out there you might have to become the demon. You become the monster.
Out there, you might become something else entirely. Despite his warning, Hasumi found herself looking toward the tunnel entrance. What choice did she
I guess when you're desperate, man.
have? She couldn't stay here forever, trapped in this impossible place with no way to contact the outside world. If I do try to walk back, she asked, is there anything I should know? Any way to increase my chances?
Man, she's good. She has this old man guy.
The old man studied her for a long moment. Don't look behind you, no matter what you hear. Don't trust the lights you see in the distance. They're not meant to guide you home, and whatever happens, don't let go of who you are. This place has a way of making people forget themselves. With that cryptic advice echoing in her mind, Hasumi made her decision. She couldn't stay here, waiting for a train that might never come, or slowly losing herself to this strange purgatory between worlds. She walked to the edge of the platform and carefully climbed down onto the tracks. The old man watched her go but said nothing more. As she took her first steps into the tunnel, heading back in the direction her train had come from, the darkness seemed to close around her like a living thing. Behind her, the lights of Kisaragi Station grew smaller and smaller, until they were just a faint glow in the distance.
And she was riding for 20 minutes, or 30 minutes on her time. I forget the exact time. So she'd have to walk back, well, at least twice that amount. Plus it's all mystical mumbo jumbo, so shit, man.
And then, even that was gone, swallowed by the absolute blackness that surrounded her on all sides. Hasumi was alone in the void, walking along train tracks that might lead home, or might lead her deeper into a nightmare from which there was no escape. With each step, she felt herself moving further from everything she'd ever known, into a darkness so complete it seemed to exist beyond the edges of reality itself. Whether she ever found her way back to the world she knew, no one can say for certain, but sometimes, late at night, travelers on the last...
Okay, so you never addressed the fact that this was documented, so how would we know if she didn't make it back? Like, how do these things happen?
Trains home report seeing a young woman standing alone on empty platforms, still searching for a way back to Kisaragi Station, or perhaps trying to escape from it forever. The legend of Kisaragi Station reminds us that the familiar world we think we
Ooh, creepy. Well, that is a train to nowhere or a train to Kisaragi Station. Man, if you guys like that, dude, let me know. I probably should have watched this at night before bed. That's a lot, you know? But shit, dude, have a good night and I'll see you all tomorrow. Bye-bye.